Hello, it's me. I feel like I haven't recorded in a while. I don't think if anybody's even noticed, but I haven't, and because I was busy doing other things. But it's fine. I'm here now. I'm back doing what I was doing, and today we're doing Laughing Jack. We did Eyeless Jack on my last video, and I think that one went okay. I don't know. Not that many people watched it, but at least I think. I haven't really checked it in a while. I'm here though. Hi. So this is another one of those that was like super popular, at least to me. And I remember whenever I was younger, I was really obsessed with like finding those videos that like were proving they were real, because it's like there's gotta be some truth to some of this. And there was this video where he they never even showed him. It was like some abandoned house in the woods. And they're like, Laughing Jack, we saw him. And I'm like, I watched that video so many times, and I never saw, like, anything that even looked like anything. Like, it looked like they were just walking around an empty house, but it's fine. Anyway, we're going over Laughing Jack. He's that one evil clown that lost all his color, and whenever I looked this up, there was, like, the original story with it, and if I feel like this hasn't gone long enough, then I will for sure read that part. But yeah, anyways, let's get into it. Origin. Created by a guardian angel, Laughing Jack was initially a colorful Jack-in-the-Box clown whose personality reflected the personality of his owners. He was later sent as a Christmas present to a lonely boy named Isaac Grossman in the 1800s. Isaac then abandoned Laughing Jack after being sent to boarding school. Laughing Jack grew monochrome and emotionless as a result of his isolation. Meanwhile, Isaac grew up to become a cold-hearted serial killer who kidnapped, tortured, and murdered several innocent neighborhood residents. Although horrified at first, Laughing Jack's personality soon emulated Isaac's evil personality. One day, Laughing Jack was accidentally released, and he appeared to be a taller, darker, and demonic version of himself. Resentful of his traitorous owner, he tortured and killed Isaac with the same weapons he used on his victims. As time passed, Laughing Jack visited several other children, most of them lonely or neglected, and pretended to be their imaginary friend. However, he would eventually torture and kill them all, and their souls trapped in the nightmarish realm of an abandoned fairground. To make matters worse, the song Pop Goes the Weasel plays in the background forever, tormenting them. See, I didn't remember Isaac turning into a killer, but I do remember him flipping out on Isaac. And I remember the being trapped in a playground and Pop Goes the Weasel. Also, like, every time I think about him for some reason, also, like, the old Melanie Martinez songs always pop up, I can't think of the one, but if you know, you know. Anyway, appearance. Laughing Jack used to be a colorful, tan-skinned clown who would wear a brilliant rainbow attire with shaggy red hair and a long cone nose. After being abandoned for 13 years, his appearance changed to be completely monochrome, leaving him almost demonic-looking. His personality. At first, Laughing Jack was an innocent, sweet, and pure-hearted angelic creation who tried his best to comfort Isaac. Considering how lonely he was, however, Isaac's late actions significantly affected, in a particularly negative way, the gift, which became more and more disturbed and psychotic with time. Laughing Jack, originally colored, lost his hues as Isaac's actions corrupted it. Eventually, Laughing Jack became totally black and white, as he reached a point of non-return and fully embraced his demonic form. Currently, Laughing Jack presents itself as a figure of pure evilness, remorseless, and violent in its very core, who takes pleasure in killing and torturing those he was once designated to protect, children. Oh, that's so sad. He's also, for some reason, I don't know if any of you got into Five Nights at Freddy's. If you did Creepypasta, you probably got into Five Nights at Freddy's. But the newer one, Security Breach, it reminds me of Sun and Moon for some reason. I think it's just the cloud motif is what's messing with me. Anyway, powers and abilities. Laughing Jack is a magical being with incredible dark magical powers. Being able to teleport in an instant in a puff of pitch black smoke, turn himself invisible, and being able to mutilate the bodies of his victims. Jack is also able to create nightmares and visual hallucinations, presumably to parents, such as he did in the original story, and can use telekinesis to move objects with his mind, making his victims seem crazy. Other stories. In an unspecified year in the modern era, Laughing Jack visited a lonely suburban 5-year-old boy named James. Under the guise of an imaginary friend, James told his mother, but she dismissed it as a phase. One night, his mother had a nightmare, witnessing the soul of Laughing Jack's past victims in an abandoned fairground. The next day, Laughing Jack placed James' action figures on top of his mother's nightstand, presumably as a way to taunt her. She questions James, but he simply tells her the truth, much to her disbelief. Later, James receives a handful of candy from Laughing Jack in the garden. His mother notices this and demands him to tell her how he got it. James, again, tells her the truth, but she assumes it's one of the next-door neighbors gave him the candy. Laughing Jack eventually kills Fido, the family dog, hangs its body in the kitchen light fixture, and trashes the rest of the kitchen. He also guts its stomach open and replaces it with candy. The mother witnesses this and took her son next door, where she called the police. The police dismissed it as a robbery, but the mother refutes their assertions, claiming that all the doors were locked and none of the windows were open during the incident. She presumes that whoever did this was already inside her house prior to the incident. They both return home and the mother decides to check on her son via the baby monitor. The mother hears a soft moan and enters James' rooms, where she sees her son nailed to the wall, disemboweled with his eyes gouged and tongue and teeth removed. She also sees Laughing Jack in his true monstrous form, who sadistically cackles at the sight of his work. Having enough, the mother grabbed a knife and tried to kill Laughing Jack, but he simply vanished into a black cloud. This distracted the mother, causing her to accidentally plunge her knife into James' beating heart instead, killing him instantly. The police arrest her and send her to the Faropolis house for the criminally insane. She claims that being institutionalized is not that bad, despite noting that somebody, presuming Laughing Jack, keeps playing Pop Goes the Weasel outside her room. I didn't know how to say the name of that place, but it's fine. I think I also sort of remember James, but it's been a long time, man. Facts. Laughing Jack was created by Steve Aikens, Snuffbomb, and he appears in the stories Laughing Jack and the origin of Laughing Jack. It is unknown just what the creature of Laughing Jack is, with popular suggestions being a demon or even a demigod. Although he started off as normal, magical, imaginary friend, eliminating these two options. Since he's imaginary, he's ageless. Laughing Jack is like a rag doll and has no internal organs or genitals. His chest is filled with stuffing, and his costume is part of his body. Jack solely targets young children as his victims. He is extremely dangerous. Laughing Jack is a vile, twisted, and sick creature who both kills children and breaks their parents' minds. He is a monster that is fully capable of mutilating and violently murdering anybody he deems as worthy to be his friend. Obviously this isn't real at all, but I think it'd be so weird for, like, there just to be a stream of parents throughout the world, like, they're all going insane, their all kids are getting, like, mutilated and stuff, and it's, like, the one consistent of it is, like, they're all saying this Laughing Jack person is there. Like, I feel like that'd be something to look into, y'all. If, like, all these parents are going insane and they're like, this Laughing Jack person, this weird clown thing. Like, I swear I didn't murder my child. This clown made me do it. And then you're just like, wow, that's concerning. Anyway, that didn't take that long. So, I don't know. This is supposed to be the creepypasta.org, the origin of Laughing Jack. It says it's long. I don't know. It's sort of long. It won't be that bad. Probably, maybe. Considering this video is, like, only 9 minutes long so far. Anyway. We'll read this. It'll be a bit of a story time. I know I don't usually do the story times, but here I shall. Because Laughing Jack was honestly one of my favorites, just because, I don't know, I always thought clowns are cool. But, it's Christmas Eve in snowy 1800 London, England, and in a small house at the edge of town there lived a lonely 7-year-old boy named Isaac. Isaac was a sad child with not a friend to his name. While most children were spending time with their families and eagerly looking forward to opening the presents that were placed with care beneath the beautifully decorated Christmas tree, little Isaac spent his most holy of nights alone in its cold, dusty attic room. Isaac's parents were very poor. His mother was a strict crow of a woman who stayed at home and schooled Isaac. His father worked long hours down the London harbor to support his family, although a large portion of his earnings went towards purchasing and consuming copious amounts of alcohol. At the end of his shift, sometimes he would come home drunk. after being thrown out of every bar in London and shouted at his beloved wife, Isaac's mother. Doesn't sound beloved, but sure. Occasionally, it would escalate to violence, and he would beat her savagely. Then, when he was done, he'd force himself upon her in a drunken sexual rage. As it so happens, this particular night was one of those occasions. Isaac just remained quiet, quivering beneath his soiled bed-sheets until the screams and loud bangs subsided. Once poor frightened Isaac was finally able to fall asleep, he dreamed of what it would be like to have a friend to play with, so maybe he could laugh and be happy like the other children of London. Luckily for little Isaac, this Christmas Eve marked a big change, when his abysmal loneliness caught the attention of a guardian angel, who then crafted a very special gift for the sad little London boy. As the sun rose on that Christmas morning, Isaac opened his eyes to find a strange wooden box sitting at the foot of his bed. With eyes widened in awe, he stared at the colorful, handcrafted box, wondering who had left it. He was not used to receiving gifts, especially toys. The little toys Isaac did, however, once he'd found abandoned on the street or washed up in the gutters. Isaac scooted up to the foot of his bed in front of the mysterious box and picked it up with both hands. The box was beautifully painted in colorful styles, with carvings of happy clown faces on the side. There was a tab in the box that simply read, "For Isaac." On the top of the box was an engraved text. Isaac squinted his eyes as he sounded out the words, "Laughing Jack in a box." I suck at stuttering. He paused. Laughing Jack in a box. Isaac had heard of a Jack-in-the-Box, but never a laughing Jack-in-a-Box. His mind spun with curiosity as he grasped the box's metal crank. Isaac turned the crank, and the song "Pop Goes the Weasel" chimed in rhythm with the crank's gyrations. As the song came up to his climax, Isaac sang along with the final verse. "Pop goes the weasel," but nothing happened. Isaac let out a sigh. "It's broken." He placed the box back down on the edge of the bed and shuffled across his small, dusty room to his dresser, where he changed out of his soiled sleepwear into his usual tattered clothes. Suddenly, Isaac heard a loud rattling noise coming from the bed beside him. He swung around to witness the wooden box violently shaking. Then, without warning, the top of the box swung open, and a parade of colorful smoke and confetti billowed out. Isaac rubbed his eyes in disbelief in what he was seeing. As the smoke cleared, there stood a tall, thin, multicolored clown man, with bright red hair and a swirly rainbow-colored cone nose, and a feathery shoulders that sat atop his raggedy and colorful clown outfit. The technicolor clown spread his arms and excitedly announced, "Come one, come all, whether big or small, to see the clown of them all. The one and only Laughing Jack-in-a-Box." Isaac's eyes lit up. "Who are you?" he asked. The colorful carny stepped down off the bed, and a happy grin said, "I'm glad you asked. I am Laughing Jack, your new friend, for life. I'm magical. I never get tired of playing. I'm a whiz at the accordion, and I adapt and develop with your own changing personalities. In other words, I'm whatever you like." Isaac looked up at the mysterious clown man. We're friends," he stuttered. Jack looked at the boy while cocking his eyebrow. "Friends? We're best friends. I was specially created to be your not-so-imaginary friend, Isaac." Isaac's jaw dropped. "You know my name?" Jack let out a whimsical laugh. "Of course I know your name. I know everything about you. So, now the introductions are out of the way, how would you like to play a game of I Spy?" Isaac grinned from ear to ear. "Really? We can play games? I'd love to. Oh." He paused. "I can't. I have to go downstairs and see my mother for homeschooling and chores." His smile faded into a look of disappointment. Jack placed his hand on Isaac's shoulder and with a warm smile said, "It's okay. I'll be waiting right here for you when you get back." Isaac's smile returned as he looked up at his new friend. Just then he heard his mother's shrill voice calling from downstairs. "Well, I gotta go. I'll see you after I'm done, okay, Jack?" he said as he headed towards the door. Jack smiled. "Absolutely, kiddo. Oh, and Isaac." Isaac looked back at Jack, who gave him a wink and said, "You should wear a smile more often. It suits you." Isaac grinned happily as he returned and walked out the door. All day, Isaac told his mother about this amazing, colorful clown man who came out of the magical box that appeared in the foot of his bed. His mother, however, did not believe a word of it. Finally, he persuaded his mother to follow him up to his room so he could behold Laughing Jack for herself. They walked up the stairs, and Isaac swung open the door to his room. "See, Mother? He's right here." Isaac paused as he scanned the room. It contained neither magical dancing clown man nor mysterious wooden box. Isaac's mother was not amused. She gave Isaac a glare so menacing it made his knees weak and his stomach sick. "But, Mother, he was." Smack. Isaac's mother delivered into him a swift, hard smack across the face. His eyes began to tear up, and his lip began to quiver, and he could feel himself about to break down. "You stupid, insolent child! How dare you lie to me about such childish idiocy? Who would want to be friends with a useless worm such as you? You shall remain in your room for the rest of the evening. You shall receive no dinner. Now, what do you say, you ungrateful wretch?" Isaac managed to swallow the knot in his throat in order to mutter a reply. "Thank you, ma'am." His mother glared down at him for a moment before leaving the room in disgust. Isaac kneeled over, burying his face in the side of the bed. Streaming tears ran down his cheeks as he began to weep. "What's wrong, kiddo?" a voice called out. Isaac looked over the edge of the bed, where Laughing Jack was now suddenly sitting beside him. "Where were you?" Isaac murmured. Isaac slid his hand through Isaac's hair to comfort him, and softly replied, "I was hiding. I can't let your parents see me, otherwise they won't let us play anymore." Isaac wiped the tears from his eyes. "Look, kiddo, I'm sorry I had to hide, but I'll make it up to you, because tonight we can play games and have tons of fun," Jack said, smiling. Isaac looked up at the vibrant palette and silently nodded, as a little smile began to form in the corners of his mouth. That night, Laughing Jack and Isaac played so many fun games. With a wave of his hand, Jack made all of Isaac's tin soldiers spring to life and march around the room. Isaac was amazed as he watched his toys move around the room on their own. Then, Laughing Jack and Isaac told each other spooky ghost stories. Isaac asked Jack if he was a ghost, but Jack explained that he was more of a cosmic entity of sorts. At the end of the night, Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out an assortment of delicious candy. Isaac was in ecstasy when he popped the first colorful treat in his mouth, as it was the first time tasting something so sweet. Isaac had so much fun and laughed so hard that night that things seemed to be finally looking a little better for Isaac. At least until the incident that occurred 3 months later. It was pleasantly warm and sunny in London that day, which was a bit of a rarity. So, with the help of a certain not-so-imaginary friend, Isaac was able to finish his chores early and was allowed to go outside and play for a bit. Things started simply enough. The duo were back around the house playing pirates, and Isaac spotted the neighbor's cat sneaking into their garden. "Yarg, we got an enemy of a spy off the starboard bow," Isaac yelled, captivated by fantasy and imagination. "Yo-ho, let's get 'em, Captain Isaac," exclaimed First Mate Jack, in his best hearty pirate accent. Laughing Jack's arm stretched out across the garden and snatched up the unsuspecting feline, who began to struggle quite vigorously. "Don't let him get away, Jackie, or I'll make you walk the plank," Isaac antagonized. Jack's grip on the cat tightened, and his arms grew and extended like anacondas, wrapping themselves around the wily feline as it struggled for dear life. Jack's arms just kept squeezing the animal, pressing the air out of the lung, and once Dear House Pet's eyes began to bulge out of its sockets, there was a loud snap. Jack quickly released the creature from his grasp. The lifeless furry husk thudded against the ground. There was a hushed silence as the two observed the cat's now twisted and mangled corpse. The silence was finally broken by uproarious laughter coming from Isaac. "Ha ha ha! Wow, I guess cats really don't have 9 lives! Ha ha ha!" Isaac exclaimed, nearly teary-eyed from laughter. Laughing Jack began to chuckle as well. "Yeah, but won't you get in trouble if your mother finds your neighbor's cat dead in the garden?" Isaac's laughter quickly subsided. "Oh, no, you're right. I'll just throw it back over the neighbor's yard?" Isaac panicked as he grabbed a nearby shovel and scooped up the broken cat cadaver before lobbing it over the fence back into the neighbor's yard. They quickly went back inside and up into Isaac's room. About an hour later it came, the ear-piercing squawk of Isaac's mother shrieking his name from downstairs. Neither Jack nor Isaac said a word as he crept down the stairs, alone to face whatever horrible fate came to him. Jack could hear much yelling from downstairs, but couldn't make out what was being said. After about 30 minutes, the teary-eyed Isaac ascended the stairs, back up to the room. "Well, Jack said nervously. Isaac just stared at the ground and he spoke. I tried to tell you it was you who hurt the cat. She didn't believe me. Said you weren't real. Jack frowned, knowing this was all his fault. Isaac used his sleeve to wipe his tears. I'm being sent off to boarding school. I'm leaving tonight, and you can't come with me. Laughing Jack's face turned to shock. What? I can't come. Where will I go? I said nothing, but pointed over at the beautiful colored box from where his friends originated. Back in there. But I won't be able to get out until... Jack paused. Isaac looked up at his only friend with tears streaming down his face. Jack, I promise I'll come back for you as soon as I can. Jack looked at the box, then back at Isaac. And I'll be right here waiting for you, kiddo. Jack smiled as a single tear ran down his cheek. He walked over to the box and with a puff of smoke was sucked back in, unable to be free until once again opened. That night, Isaac was sent off to boarding school. For the first time, Laughing Jack felt what it was like to be lonely. Even when trapped in his box, Jack was able to see things going on around it. So each day he waited for his friend to return, and each day the room got older and dustier. Laughing Jack's one purpose was to be Isaac's best friend for life, and now he had to wait day after day, month after month, to be reunited with his special friend. Isaac's parents still lived in the house, but never came to the upstairs room. The only time they made their presence known was whenever Jack would hear them fighting. Still, Jack's life became one of solitude, loneliness, and disappointment. As years went by, Jack's once bright, vibrant colors began to fade into a monochrome blur of pitch-black void and stark white emptiness, trapped all alone, eternal and hopeless. 13 years passed until the night Isaac's father came home particularly drunk and got into an argument with his wife. As per usual, things escalated to physical violence once again. Over this time, she didn't get back up. Isaac's father had beaten his wife to death, bloody pulp, and was sentenced to hang at the gallows the next day. With both his parents' death, that meant now 20-year-old Isaac inherited the dusty old house he spent the earlier half of his childhood in. Laughing Jack was quite surprised when he heard his old friend's footsteps walking up the stairs to the old attic for the first time in 13 years. However, it was not the reunion Jack had hoped for. Isaac looked different. Not only was he older, but he also seemed to possess this odd, grim look on his face. No longer was the hopeful and curious young boy Jack first met all those years ago. Jack eagerly awaited Isaac's releasing him from the prison he had waited in for so many years. But still, Jack's box sat there, untouched and unnoticed on the shelf in the corner of the room, with all the other dusty, unwanted knickknacks. Isaac had completely forgotten about his old friend, dismissed as some sort of early childhood fabrication. Surprisingly, this made Laughing Jack feel nothing. He was hollow. 13 years of waiting and disappointment left the monochrome cloud void of sorrow and self-pity. Jack remained in his box, colorless and without emotion. The next day, Isaac went off to work at his job as an upholsterer, doing furniture repairs for the good people of London. Jack waited in captivity. Hours later, a drunken Isaac returned home and stumbled up the stairs to his room. But this time he had a friend with him. It was a lady friend Isaac had picked up at the bar earlier that evening. She was beautiful with flowing blonde hair, sapphire blue eyes, and a smile that could make hearts melt. Laughing Jack's attention was drawn to Isaac's guest. Who was this? A new friend? Why does Isaac need a new friend? I thought I was Isaac's only friend, Jack thought to himself. From within this hellish confinement, Isaac and his lady friend sat down on the bed and chatted about life in London. Isaac made a joke about the weather, and they both laughed. Laughing Jack hissed with envy over Isaac's new friend. Isaac and the girl looked deeply into each other's eyes as they leaned in for a kiss. Locking lips with a passionate swirling of tongues in one another's mouth, Jack was perplexed by this strange display of affection, for he had never seen kissing before. As the kissing grew more intense, Isaac ran his hand along the girl's smooth thigh and up her dress. However, his guest just brushed his hand away. Isaac was persistent, though, and once again ran his hand along her smooth thigh and up her skirt. This time, placing his hand upon her silky undergarments, the woman took great displeasure with Isaac's sexual advancements and pushed Isaac away before delivering a hard smack across his face. Isaac's eyes darkened as he glared at the woman. His once drunken passion turned into a booze-fueled anger. The woman's heart sped up as she saw Isaac's face boil with rage. "Stupid whore!" Isaac yelled as he smashed his fist into the girl's face. Laughing Jack's eyes widened as he witnessed the long streaks of red liquid gush out of the girl's nose. "What game is this?" he thought, his eyes averting to such violent sights. Isaac firmly clutched the girl's wrist with one hand as he tore her panties off with the other. The terrified girl tried to fight back, but Isaac was overpowering her. He roughly fondled her breasts before savagely grabbing her hair and forcing his tongue down the sobbing young woman's throat. He responded by chomping down as hard as she could on Isaac's tongue. Jack watched with wide and curious eyes as his old friend released his new playmate and clutched his mouth as it filled with warm red blood. The frightened girl fell off the bed and dropped down on the floor as she scurried towards the exit. Isaac quickly lurched forward and was able to catch the fleeing plaything by the end of her dress. Reaching back, he wielded a lead candlestick off the nightstand beside him, and with all of his might bashed in the back of the young woman's head, which burst open like a ripe watermelon, the thick blood spattering across the room as the girl's body convulsed on the ground for several seconds before going completely still. Blood was everywhere. Some droplets even managed to get on Laughing Jack's box. He was very much enjoying the show. For the first time in 13 long years, a smile began to creep across Laughing Jack's face, and all of a sudden a chuckle escaped his cold lips, then another, and another, until Jack was crackling and howling with laughter from inside the sealed box. "What a wonderfully fascinating game," Jack thought as he watched the motionless girl, gold and blonde hair flow red with blood. As the adrenaline began to mellow, Isaac realized he had to dispose of the body. He picked up the girl's lifeless corpse and plopped it on the bed. He then left the room, closing the door behind him and locking it before leaving the house. He returned almost a full day later and re-entered the room, bringing with him a metal garbage can and his bag of upholstery tools from work. He then cleared everything off the wooden desk on the wall opposite of the door, and then dragged the bed and bloody corpse into the middle of the room. This not only gave Isaac room to work, but it also gave Laughing Jack a front row seat to the whole spectacle. Jack watched with a big, unfading grin as Isaac played his new game with the soiled corpse. Once Isaac was all set up, he got to work. First, he dumped out the contents of his big, black tool bag onto the work table behind him. An assortment of knives, hammers, and pliers, and other tools was now laid out before him. His first pick was curved upholstery knife, which he used to carefully skin the body. The skin was then placed on the racks to be stretched and turned into leather. Once that was put in place, Isaac then used a handsaw to saw off the arms, legs, and head, disturbing a home with several families of maggots in the process. After filling the garbage can with bleach and other vile chemicals, he submerged the limbs until the meat was stripped from the bones. Isaac finished the bones out of the soupy corpse juice and placed them on the work table. Then, to cover a night, he brought the trash can outside and dumped the rotting remains in the London sewers to be slipped away into the harbor. For the next 3 days, Laughing Jack watched in wonderment as he inspired Isaac, crafted the once human anatomy into a grotesque armchair abomination. The femur was made into the back legs of the chair, while the tibia, with the feet still attached, of course, was made into the front chair legs. A wooden frame was used for the base and backing of the chair. However, the rim of the backing was crafted using the spinal column. The arm bones were used at the arms of the chairs and were fastened in place by some ribs. The now leathery flesh was sewn onto the seat and backing of the chair, and the golden blonde hair was braided into the lining for the base. Atop his armchair was from hell, sat the skull that once belonged to the girl who had the golden blonde hair, the sapphire eyes, and the smile that could melt hearts. Isaac was quite pleased with his work, and Laughing Jack was too impressed by his old playmate's found creativity. After that night, Isaac never touched another drop of alcohol again. For now, he possessed a much more macabre thirst. In the following weeks, Isaac made several improvements to his little workshop of horrors. He removed the mattress from the bed and put a row of thick wooden planks in its place, and then he fastened arm and leg restraints to the bottom and the sides. This would mean he would be able to entertain his guests for a longer period without them trying to rude escape attempts. Isaac needed only one final thing before planning another grotesque party. He worked on it for a week straight, carving it out of wood. After a coat of white paint was applied, Isaac's creation was complete. It was a wooden mask resembling something that he would wear at the Venetian masquerade ball. I don't know why I couldn't say Venetian for a second. It had a furrowed brow and long, troll-like nose, and would allow him to strike fear in the hearts of his beloved guest. With his new face complete, and the room transformed into a bloody murder nest, it was finally time for Isaac Lee Grossman to bring home a new playmate. The following night, Laughing Jack watched as a masked Isaac Grossman stomped up the stairs, carrying with him a large burlap sack with his newest guest writhing within. He dumped the bag out into the torture bed, and it was plopped a bound, gagged, and frightened young boy, probably only 5 or 6 years old. Isaac quickly undid the boy's bindings and held him down as he restrained his hands and feet to the steel bed frame. Tears streamed endlessly down the boy's helpless little face. As Isaac laid out his tools on the workbench, Isaac returned, wielding a pair of rusty pliers, and wasted no time and slid the bottom jaw of the pliers under the boy's fingernails on his right index finger and clamped it tightly. The boy's eyes quivered as he began muttering through his gag, begging Isaac to let him go. Isaac smirked as he slowly bent the pliers backward, painfully prying off the first fingernail. The boy screamed through his gag as he writhed in agony in the wooden boards. His fingers began to gush with blood. Isaac then moved on to the boy's middle finger, firmly grasping the nail with the rusty pliers. Once again he jerked the pliers back, but this time the nail only tore off halfway. The boy yelped in pain as his fingers twitched and shot with blood. Clamping the half-pried-off nail, Isaac gave it another yank. The nail tore off, but not without taking a good deal of skin tissue with it. Even Isaac was a bit rebuffed by this painful sight, unlike the spying, Laughing Jack, who was cackling with joy at the disturbing actions as he watched from within his old dusty box. Isaac returned to the workbench and swapped the pliers for a large iron hammer, and then made his way to the foot of the torture bed, where with one hand he held down the boy's left leg. He raised the hammer high above his head as the boy cried and pleaded for mercy through his dirty gag. Then with all his might, Isaac slammed the hammer down on the boy's bare kneecap, shuddering the bone into gravel with a loud crack. The child convulsed in pain, with a shrill scream muffling throughout the cloth gag tied tightly to his face. As the child struggled with intense pain, Isaac placed the hammer down on the wooden bed and returned once more to the workbench, where he equipped himself with a large, sharp knife. Without delay, he began carving the words, "useless worm," into the child's quivering chest. When he finished, the boy was barely conscious. Isaac knelt down and whispered in the boy's ear, "This is what happens to rotten children who make nasty faces at people." The child's eyes filled with tears one final time as Isaac began to carve the skin off the boy's face. But to Isaac's surprise, the boy still clung to life. The mutilated child just stared up at Isaac with his big round eyes, which filled Isaac's black heart with rage and hatred. "Even without your face, you're still an ugly little shit," Isaac shouted as he picked up the hammer from the foot of the bed and began to bash the poor boy's skull in. He smashed it over and over until it was nothing but bloody, caved-in mass of flesh, pouring the thick red blood and oozing out chunks of brain matter from across the room. Laughing Jack gleefully observed the grand finale, which had lived up to his expectations quite wonderfully. Isaac's next guest was a blind old woman, whom I had invited over for tea. It took her almost 5 minutes to realize the chair she was sitting in was crafted using human remains, and another 6 minutes to find the stairs, only to topple down them, flailing and screaming like a loon. Isaac decided to end this cruel joke there with a simple ice pick through her eye socket. After that, he brought over a little girl, whom he force-fed broken glass before using her stomach as a punching bag. As the weeks went by, more and more unlucky souls met their end in Isaac Grossman's attic. And as the mad Grossman's personality became more dark and sadistic, Laughing Jack's personality followed suit while he rotted within his dusty box. Until one very cold December night, the rusty nails that were holding up the shelf of forgotten knickknacks finally gave way, and the whole thing plummeted to the ground. Isaac heard the loud thud from downstairs and decided to climb up to the attic to investigate. He walked across the blood-stained wood floor in the attic and over towards the fallen shelf. Isaac brushed aside some of the trinkets that had broken in the crash. When he finally came across the jack-in-a-box from his childhood, Isaac barely recognized the old, tattered box as he picked it up and blew off some of the dust. Then, for whatever nostalgic reason, he decided to grasp the box's rusty clink and began turning it. A horribly off-key "Pop Goes the Weasel" clinked from the worn-out old box. As it reached its climax, Isaac sung along the final verse. "Pop goes the weasel." The top of the box swung open, but nothing happened. It was empty. Isaac expected as much, and he tossed the old box in the garbage with the other broken knickknacks. After the mess was cleaned up, he went to open the door and go back downstairs, but it was stuck. Isaac pulled hard, but the door wouldn't budge. Just then he heard the most horrible, raspy voice call out from behind him. Isaac! A jolt ran down Isaac's spine, and the hairs on the back of his neck stood straight up as he slowly turned around. All the way across the room by the garbage can stood the nightmarish Laughing Jack. He was completely monochrome. His mangled black hair hung down in twisted locks. Sharp, jagged teeth decorated his twisty grin, and his arms hung down like a rag doll with the grotesquely long fingers nearly scraping the floor. Then, with a bone-chilling, raspy voice, the fiendish clown spoke. How nice it is to be free! Did you miss me, Isaac? Isaac was paralyzed in fear. But I thought you were real. Imaginary, Isaac stuttered. Jack replied with a long, horrifying gaggle. Oh, I'm real, kiddo. In fact, I've been waiting such a long time for this day to finally come. When I can play with my best friend for life. One last time. Before Isaac could reply, Jack's long arm stretched across the room and wrapped around Isaac's legs. The twisted clown began pulling him closer, dragging him into his own wooden torture bed as Isaac's fingernails scraped along the floor. Ignoring the restraints, Jack swiftly grabbed 4 3-inch-long iron nails from the workbench and pressed them straight through Isaac's hands and feet, nailing him to the wooden torture bed. Isaac growled in pain as he shouted at his captor, Ow! Fuck you, goddamn clown-nosed freak! Laughing, Jack just chuckled as he forcefully held Isaac's head in place, stating, If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Jack reached his long, crooked fingers into Isaac's mouth, firmly grasping his tongue and stretching it out as far as it could go. The clown then reached back and grabbed a long, sharp knife from the table and slowly began to slice through the meat of Isaac's tongue. Once lopped off, Isaac's mouth began to overflow with blood. Jack responded by shoving a small, cylindrical metal tube through Isaac's throat to act as a temporary breathing hole. At this point, Isaac was already in great pain, and his eyes clenched shut to avoid seeing the sickening horrors that were being performed upon his body. Come on, it's no fun if you don't watch, Laughing Jack said playfully, but Isaac kept his eyes tightly shut. Laughing Jack sighed, Suit yourself. Jack then forcefully held open one of Isaac's eyes. He reached back with his big arm and took some of the long, pointy fishing hooks from the workbench. Slowly, Jack pushed the sharp edge of the hook through the top eyelid, straight through the bottom of the eyebrow, and out the top, permanently pinning it open. Then, he took out a second hook, pushing it through the bottom eyelid and pinning it to the cheek. Jack repeated the process on the other eye, and before long, a series of sharp metal hooks made sure Isaac didn't miss out on any of the action. Laughing Jack then took the same knife he had used to lop off Isaac's tongue and began to focus on the removal of Isaac's lips. Jack carefully sliced 2 long strips of flesh off of Isaac's upper and lower mouth, causing his teeth and gums to be completely exposed. Looks like someone hasn't flossed regularly. Laughing Jack cackled under his breath as he reached back and grabbed the hammer. Isaac attempted to mutter some kind of beg for mercy, however only gurgling moans escaped his throat. Jack raised the hammer in the air and with a twisted grin slammed it down, giving up a loud crack as the iron hammer shattered Isaac's teeth like brittle clay. Jack dropped the hammer and began to howl with laughter as he tore open Isaac's shirt. Taking the sharpest knife, Jack cut straight down Isaac's chest all the way down past the stomach. Isaac groaned with sharp, stinging pain as the monochrome monster wormed his wretched fingers underneath the skin of Isaac's chest, peeling it back as he was about to perform his horrible live autopsy. First, Jack began to pull out Isaac's intestines in the same manner a magician will pull a series of colorful cloths out of his pocket. Then, after snipping off a small length of intestines, Jack pressed one end against his cold black lips and began blowing air into the foul organ. Once inflated, he twisted it up in the shape of a poodle, and with a loud chuckle exclaimed, I can do giraffes, too. Isaac remained still in pain and shock, and the clown creature gently placed the macabre balloon animal beside Isaac's head. For his next trick, Laughing Jack reached deep into Isaac's open stomach cavity and yanked out one of his kidneys. Holding in his hand, Jack turned to his captive friend and shrugged, saying that kidneys really aren't my thing. Tossing the organ aside, Laughing Jack noticed that Isaac was beginning to drift into death. feeling tired already. Why, we're nearly at the grand finale!" Laughing Jack exclaimed as he reached into the sleeve and pulled out a long adrenaline needle. "This ought to perk you right up," Jack shouted as he slammed the needle into Isaac's retina and injected the liquid right into his eye socket. Jack wiggled and twisted the needle further into his old playmate's eyeball. As Isaac reeled back into life and the feeling of the sharp needle scraping the back of his eye socket with a sinister chuckle, Jack yanked the needle out, pulling the eyeball out with it. Isaac's right eye now hung out of his eye socket by the eye stalk as it dribbled down the side of his face. "Well, now that I have your full attention," the insidious clown then took a long, crooked index finger and poked a hole into Isaac's stomach. Isaac lowered his head down towards the open chest cavity and stretched his mouth wide open. Within seconds, a torrent of filthy cockroaches started crawling out of Khan's gullet, spilling into Isaac's open chest. Each vile roach crawled and pushed its way into the small opening of Isaac's stomach, filling it from within full of disgusting, writhing bugs. As his stomach became bloated with bugs, the roaches began to scurry up his throat, squeezing their way out of his mouth and nasal cavity. Isaac was inches from death when his captor kneeled beside him and spoke in his ear. "It's been a blast, kiddo. But it looks like our time together's about up. No need for tears, though, because I plan to spread my friendship to all the lonely kids of the world." And with that said, Laughing Jack reached into Isaac's chest and yanked out his still-beating heart. As his life bled out into the cold wooden bed, Isaac's life flashed before his eyes. He saw his mother, his father, the boarding school, his victims, and the last thought that fluttered through his mind was a very special Christmas where he woke up to a beautifully hand-carved wooden box that contained his very first friend. There are rumors that, when the police finally found Isaac Grossman's rotten, maggot-infested corpse weeks later on Christmas Eve, that even though his face had been bashed into bits, he almost looked happy. I like that story. I don't know, something about it is like, that's great. That's a good story. It's a horrible story, obviously. I would never want that to be a real thing that ever actually happened. But I liked it for story reasons. I thought it was good. Anyway, original author, Snuffbomb. Snuffbomb's a messed up dude. But I mean, other than it being a twisted imaginary clown thing, that's not too different from what some psychos do. So, you know, take with that what you will. Anyway, I think this is where we're gonna end it. Thank you for listening and involving yourself. I hope all of you have a good day and don't get murdered by a not real clown that turns sort of real. And, you know, live your life. Be happy. Like creepy things. See ya!